Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 6andOut podcast. I am one of your hosts, Craig. It's great to have you along. Thank you for listening today. I have with me one of my faithful Aussie friends, Arnie, who is, actually, we'll let Arnie give us a quick update. How are you doing, mate?
I'm pretty good, mate. I'm on my final day of hotel quarantine here in Hong Kong, one of the last bastions that still have hotel quarantine as part of their mandatory visitor scheme coming into the country. So I'm feeling pretty happy. Last day, mate. But yeah, great to be here, buddy.
Yeah, good stuff. And, we would never forget him, but Brett is taking some well-deserved time off. He's somewhere, I think I would probably describe it as romantic, Arnie, and exotic maybe might be the right word, but perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. He greets us. He's still in touch with us, but he greets us with the word bulla. So you can kind of work out what exotic location he is currently taking a well-deserved break. Not from cricket. I'm sure he's still watching all that stuff, but keeping in touch. But look, just generally having a good break from work, and I believe celebrating a couple of milestones while he's out somewhere in exotic land.
We'll look forward to hearing more about that. And I have to be honest, if his 6andOut does not feature at least a little bit of the location he's in, then I'll be disappointed. But we'll let him enjoy himself and then talk about that in next week. So anyway,
yeah, so yes, we miss you, Brett. We miss you, Brett, but you'll be back soon.
100%. All right, so look, we're going to do a little bit of a shorter podcast this week, just with our mate out. So there are a couple of topics that we couldn't cover without him. So one that we will cover, and we'll maybe just get kicked onto it right now, is you can see on the screen, I'm sharing the current 100 table. So we are recording this as of August 11th. Today was the first doubleheader of the 100. So we're not going to cover the ladies too much because they've obviously just had the Commonwealth Games. We'll stick to the men a little bit and cover off a little bit of the 100 to start off and see where it goes. So, Arnie, why don't we talk about perhaps the biggest upset or surprise that you've seen so far in terms of maybe performance of an individual or performance of a team that sticks out to you?
Okay, well, given that prompt, I'm going to say the biggest surprise, given our previous week's predictions as we came up with, is London Spirit, Owen Morgan's men. So both on an individual performance, Owen Morgan himself leading the way with, I can't remember his score, but his first innings, first game, he basically won it for the team. And the fact that they're unbeaten and they're on top of the ladder. That's the biggest surprise for me so far.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And I think, both of us, I think, we'll do a quick update on how our predictions are kind of panning out, maybe as we get through some of this. But both of us had London Spirit as our wooden spoons or our outs for the competition. I was quite impressed with Owen Morgan. I mean, he hadn't played any cricket since he gave up the ODI or the white ball cricket England captaincy. So it's not like he'd been probably in the nets all that much. It's not like he'd been facing in and out, day in, day out, the standard of nets bowling that he was used to. So, I mean, maybe it's something to be said for, we see a number of cricketers taking a break around the world at the moment, with Trent Bolt with big news this week, Stokes with big news not so long ago, and maybe Morgan, just the fatigue maybe on the running the ODI side was maybe more than folks ever maybe give a credit card for. But I've been very, very impressed myself.
I think that's a massive part because guess what? I go always back to, and you guys hear me bang on about this, and I'm a massive mental health advocate, so it is mental health. So, because don't forget, your brain actually instructs the rest of your body and makes decisions and tells you to move one step forward or two steps back or whatever. And if you're constantly fatigued and under stress and overpressured and so many commitments in life, that's got to take a toll. So I think as much as his body has refreshed physically, I think just the mental break and the mental refresh has probably allowed him to come in with a level head, all that usual cliche stuff, but he's come in and just owned it. And it helps because he's in his own home country as well. So, and what's backing all of that is experience, but he's fresh and he has experience. So anyway, always bang on, but
and perhaps maybe if you're going from something that's, I mean, let's be honest, that being captain of England is quite a serious job. It's something that you're being written about day in, day out, even if you've won the World Cup, even if you're the only English captain, really Irish, but English captain to win a World Cup, you still come under enormous pressure. And maybe even going to, I'm not saying that the 100 is a Mickey Mouse competition. In fact, I think that looking at the T20 Blast and this, I think probably the interest has peaked more in this or in the 100 than it has the T20 Blast. Folks might disagree with me on that, but maybe going from that very, very serious background of having to be under entire, in strenuous amounts of pressure to going to a competition which is quite lighthearted when you think about it, is probably a really, really nice transition. We even saw him in the commentary box at times, giving pretty good insight. He's been impressive in the commentary box. I actually like the sound of his voice, and I like the kind of input he has, and to seamlessly kind of go from retired captain into commentary very quickly. He's clearly a man of many talents, so yeah, impressed with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So we seem to share the same, for lack of better words, surprise moments of the 100 competition so far. Of course, that's just the men's. As you mentioned, the women's have only just kicked off with that doubleheader last night. I mean, if we have time, we could just talk a little bit about that. But yeah, ultimately, we should just cover what the pack schedule is already for our short podcast today. Yeah. So yeah, go for it.
So I'm gonna pick up on your Northern Superchargers. So for those not aware, Arnie is a big Leeds United fan who kicked off their Premier League campaign very recently. But Northern Superchargers got off to a nice little start there. They beat my Oval Invincibles in the opening game, which was interesting to say the least. But they've lost a couple on the bounce. How are you feeling about their chances there?
Yeah, look, I'm actually still extremely bullish about the Northern Superchargers. Those last two matches, especially the one last night, I felt it was their game to lose for last night. And yes, unfortunately, it did go down to the wire. And we had a brilliant, I hope I'm talking about the right game. We had a brilliant innings from Sam Curran from the opposition, which got it done, basically. So I'm still quite bullish because I think that team is gelling well. They just have been on the wrong side of the result. But again, I'm trying not to see it with too much of biased eyes, but I really think their position on the table, which is fifth at the moment, is probably an underestimation of really where they may end up when season ends proper.
Yeah, so I've just expanded it on the screen here. You obviously can't see this, Arnie, but they beat the Originals on the opening match with six wickets with 6 balls remaining. They then lost to the Rockets, who are a very strong team. We'll come to them in a second. The Rockets beat them by 7 wickets.
Yeah, that's Brett's team, by the way.
Yeah, there you are. And then the Invincibles, like you said, Tom Curran or Sam Curran, I can't remember, one of the Curran brothers had.
It was Sam that, Sam did really set it up. He really, I mean, there's a couple of them, but Sam really took it home. But he got out towards the end, and his brother Tom really finished it off. But it was really Sam, I think, that was key. I think he even got player of the match from memory, but I can't remember all those details. But yeah, you're right. But the Chargers were flying. They were flying. I think at the 10th or 9th over, they were like well ahead. They were like over 100 or something. So they were cruising to a score of about 180. But hats off to the opposition. They really slowed things down. Took a couple of wickets and really just slowed things down. And only had a modest total of 150 odd and took it to the wire. Ultimately, wasn't quite defendable, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Invincibles had to actually do, I mean, you've already mentioned they had a couple of key performances by the Curran brothers, but they also had to take Adil Rashid to the cleaners. I think it was the most expensive Adil Rashid has ever been in the 100, so, there's only been one season and a handful of games now, but Adil Rashid is not typically someone who goes for a lot of runs, so it was a bit of a flash in the pan, middle order.
Yeah, that's right. There was a couple of let's say moments like Rashid going for 33 or whatever his most expensive in the 100 ever, those things made the difference. And there's nothing more to say. I think, is it Narayan? I'm trying to think. I've watched that many games, and I'm still getting used to the teams of the 100. Narayan had a standout performance, was on a hat trick. But look, a lot of key moments that ultimately brought it to the Invincibles' favour in the end. So good on them. Well done to them.
Just when we're on, so I'm gonna you've made a nice segue there to my Oval Invincibles, or as I call them, the Agents of Chaos. So I would say that obviously a little disappointing. I'll show the viewers on YouTube here the results here. So we lost the opening match to the London Spirit. I will say that was, you talk about a topsy-turvy innings. The Invincibles bowled 12 no balls. They gave the London Spirit 12 free hits and they lost by 3 runs. So the London Spirit have done well, and obviously that there's a key inning there from Owen Morgan. I feel like they will think they've let one get away in the early stages of the competition, but to come back and beat the Northern Superchargers like they did yesterday, when they were probably doomed to fail there when at stages, it probably balances it out. And then they obviously in the middle game there have walloped the poor old Welsh Fire, who I don't think it's going to get any easier for them anytime soon. So the Oval Invincibles, I'm content. Have you had a chance? Did you see any of my my favorite player in the whole of the 100, Mohammad Hasnain? Did you see any of him?
No, I haven't, unfortunately, mate. I was mentioning to you offline. A lot of the games I've only followed via Cricinfo because being in quarantine and all, I don't have access to the broadcast like I would typically have. And then there's the issue of time zone, so I eventually have to go to sleep because I try my best to be superhuman and survive on very little sleep, but it's just not possible.
Maybe the double headers might help that actually, because with the ladies coming in, you'll have slightly earlier games for at least half of the men's games, so that'll help. But when you do get a chance to watch him, it's exhausting. I mean, he runs in from basically the boundary. He is quick, but he is erratic. It is great fun to watch. In the first game against the Spirit, I can't remember, the opening batsman hit him for 2 mammoth sixes. With that pace on the ball, if I was in London, I would want to go watch him play for the Invincibles or the Oval, but maybe not so much for getting the wickets and getting, bowling economically, but just for the sheer entertainment of what is about to happen next year. He really adds a bit of spice. You don't see it so much. I mean, there's a knack to bowling in these shorter formats. You talk about Sunil Narayan. He's a perfect example of somebody who's very cunning and very tricky. Mohammad Hasnain has none of that. He is just, you know exactly what I'm going to throw at you. It's, can you be quick enough to get out of the way or to hit it? And it's fantastic to watch. I've loved it so far.
So are you saying he just bowls flat track dollies for players to just smash out of the park? Is that what you're saying? Or you don't know what you're going to get from?
You don't really know what you're going to get. You know you're going to get your 87, 88 miles an hour. You know where I would love to see him bowl? I would love to see him bowl in Australia. I think on those hard, bouncy, if he was in the Waka, Jesus, that would be unbelievable viewing. Now, obviously, the pitches in England, it's been a dry summer in England, but some of the wickets kind of hold up the ball a little bit. So I think that's where he struggles. He doesn't really tend to have that. If you think about a fast death bowler or a fast T20 specialist like Chris Jordan. Like Chris Jordan has an encyclopedia of different things he can go to. Mohammad Hasnain doesn't really have that, but he does have the raw pace. So it's a lottery. You're rolling the dice with this man. He can get a wicket. They didn't play him against the Superchargers, so I'm not sure if that was a potential sign that he's maybe going to play for Pakistan somewhere, or if they've just realized that he's too erratic to keep him aside. But I hope that he comes back, because it was phenomenal viewing.
There you go, Agents of Chaos, and he's the number one.
Exactly.
Number one for it.
Tell me this, did...
well, there you go. I'll keep an eye out, mate. Or I could just even YouTube it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. I think he's taken only 1 or 2 wickets so far, but what you definitely could YouTube is Will Smead, who, if folks haven't heard, he had the first ever century in the 100 for the Birmingham
That's
Phoenix.
right.
Yes. Which was, I mean,
that's special.
It is, absolutely. I mean, I remember where I was whenever I saw Brendan McCullum hitting the first century in the IPL. Like, I remember exactly where I was. I was in Spain on holiday with my granny, and they had a shitty Spanish TV, and the only channel that was in English was Eurosport, and what were they showing? The IPL, and so I watched it there. I remember it, yeah.
I remember where I was. I think you all know where I was when Smead hit his century. In fact, I actually happened to be watching the broadcast. Believe it or not, I got the broadcast working, and I was watching it. I didn't realize the significance until the commentators really mentioned all of that. But yes, I remember. I was just sitting here in my very tiny hotel room, 13 square meters large, it's great. It's history. I did not realize, but well done to him. And no one can ever take that away from him. And it was a solid innings, and obviously he got the job done, right?
He did, and obviously the Birmingham Phoenix are one of the top picks for a lot of people, rightfully so. I think when we look at how they've performed so far, with the likes of Moeen Ali has been very effective in both with bowling and with bat. Liam Livingstone is always going to be a handful. He seems to have just picked up where he left off last time around. And yeah, whenever Will Smead throws in a century, I mean, they're going to be incredibly hard to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're doing really well. I actually, with the few things you mentioned there, I wouldn't mind just raising 1 or 2 comments. Number one, do you think with such a milestone innings and such high profile of what he's just done and created history, do you think Smead will get a look into the T20 World Cup squad, or that's pretty much locked in? Number two, my feeling of Livingstone, I don't know if this is your feeling, is he seems to have dropped off a bit since the IPL, where he was just on fire with bloody everything. So I just feel that his form has still been a little bit lukewarm, and it's carried on into the 100, unless I'm mistaken. And I'm trying to think, you did mention something else as Phoenix being the favourites, and, well, I have no reason to dispute it, although they're 1 for 1 at the moment. They're 1 from 2 matches at the moment, so who knows? They're just above the Superchargers, which for me, again, if I'm right, and I think Superchargers are a dark horse and they're playing below where they should be, then watch out. Phoenix, maybe Superchargers could be a little bit higher up.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm just bombarding a lot of stuff, but it's mainly about Smead and Livingstone.
Yeah, well, let's take Livingstone first, because that is an interesting one. Because when I think of Livingstone at his best, you're right. I actually don't think of him in an England shirt. I think of, well, the first thing I think of is that hilarious but incredibly unfortunate series of blows to the nether region in the BBL. If you haven't seen that, Arnie, you've got to go look at it. It is unbelievable. He gets hit several times in the gentleman's area, and it's I mean, I don't know who's in the commentary box.
Yes.
It is. So unfortunately, that's the first thing I think of. But then I think about one of his sixes in the BBL, which was just monumental. He packed on the runs in the BBL down there. He packed on the runs and bowled nicely in the IPL. So I do think that he shone primarily in franchise cricket. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, it's difficult because when you go from a franchise setup where you can kind of revolve around a player like Livingstone's quality, where he can bowl 1-2 overs of his little leg spinny type deliveries, and then you could have him at 3, 4, 5, and he can just blast away without much care and win a game for you. When you come to the England side, there are actually 2 or 3 guys who could do that. I mean, Jody Bairstow, with minus a leg spin, can do that. Jason Roy, although he's out of form, can take a game away from people. Joe Root, maybe not perhaps in the T20 format just now, but in the ODI format, can take a game away from you. So I think he kind of gets maybe lost in the shuffle a wee bit, and maybe might be so so specific in terms of teams building around his pure striking power. And maybe there are other England players that are more established or have a more defined role in terms of being able to open and gauge an innings and bring some kind of, I guess, steady to an innings when needed, where he's not really viewed in that way. So I'm just kind of musing out loud with that. I think that's a great question, and I've noticed it too. And then on Will Smeed, I mean, I actually don't know an awful lot about the lad. I couldn't even tell you what age he is. I think he's actually quite young. In the broadcast, I think they mentioned that he actually applied his trade most of his youth as a rugby player. So he's got big muscles, and it might have actually only been his second professional game. I think it maybe one. I'll have to go back and check that. It might have been his second or third professional game. So I think he has a little more laying the bedrock of his career to do before he gets a knock on the door. But even then, I mean,
yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Even then.
So I'm like you. I don't know a lot about him, but that's why it's great looking at all these domestic competitions. We get to actually broaden and deepen our knowledge of other players that are on that aren't just the internationals. Do you know what I mean? It's just like the BBL, for example. Hilton Cartwright, he's a domestic player, but he's currently in this competition, the 100. But you really get to look into all the different, I don't know, I guess call them the domestic players, and they're great players and they're young players. They're just maybe politically yet they're not, they haven't been let into the side or given a go, because you've got all the senior players that have still got the gigs. And inside the IPL, I learned a lot about the local Indian domestic players. And that's what's great about this competition. So perhaps I need to start looking at the South African one as well and all that, but that's for another day. But you're right. People with the performance like Smeed, if he backs that up for the next, I wouldn't say for the next couple of games. I mean, if he could, that would really put him on the map even more and really put the question to selectors, and a really hard question. But if he just has a really good 100 season, that really will cement him from going forward. And guess what? He could be really cheap, a cheap import for other competitions like the BBL and all that. But anyway, I'm thinking too far ahead. No, so I'm like you. I'm learning all about players.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point. Just as you were talking there, I was thinking back to the end of the IPL. And at the end of the IPL, you had probably 3 top order batsmen that were pushing knocking on that door of, should these guys get a call up? You think about Jaiswal for the Rajasthan Royals. You think about Gaikwad was already on the map. Shubman Gill was coming back into the equation too. So you had a few guys who you mightn't have had on the radar for a T20 World Cup back then, and are very much now being tested out. Sanju Samson might be another one there as well. And then on the other end of it, as we look at somebody like a Henry Brooks, who took a 5 for the Birmingham Phoenix just the other night. In the IPL, you had folks like Umran Malik and Avesh Khan, and there's another one that I'm forgetting, but there were 3 names coming out of that at the end. We're going, well, why are these guys not getting a look in for the Indian setup as well? So I feel like you're always going to have those guys coming out the other end. It's fantastic to think about, and it's one of the nice things to see some of those T20 series after the IPL, when the likes of maybe Hardik Pandya needs a rest, or these other big name players, so that the youngsters can get a go in their international colours after having a nice little franchise tournament or something. So maybe we'll see it. I don't know.
It really just unearths the domestic talent and puts them on the map internationally, because everyone's watching. And all they need, I'm sure there's key moments where we can say it can really rocket their career. But my view on that, one example would be after they've been unearthed, for them to then be called up to play in another domestic competition in another country. That's when I consider them what's the word? Just quite where the dial has been shifted enough where you I won't say you've made it, but it's like kind of saying they've made that transition from just playing domestically. They're now part of that international group, crop of players. They may or may not get selected national side, but they're now genuinely part of the international scene. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
a great example of what you've just talked about is Daniel Sams, who was
yes,
not really on the Australian agenda in terms of international cricket, but really
correct.
got into the Mumbai Indian space. And for the Rockets, he's a regular there now, taking 3-4s and making runs too. So
Actually, that reminds me. What's the name? Oh, I forgot his name. He's getting a bit older now. He's an Aussie. He's won a couple of IPL titles. He's won a BBL title with the Melbourne Renegades. Oh, what's his name?
oh, the keeper,
No, he's an all-rounder. Oh, I can't believe I've forgotten his name.
Stoinis?
No, he's a bit older. He's got a beard, a bit grey now. He's a bit stocky. Oh, I can't remember his name for the life of me. Can see his face.
Kerry Packer?
Hang on. He won BBL 8 for the Melbourne Renegades, and I'm a Melbourne Renegades fan. So hang on. Let me type it, and you just keep talking.
Yeah.
Renegades.
Anybody listening at home, can you get to it before? I'm sure there are people screaming in. It's this person, it's that person.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can think of it. Northern.
Yeah, it's cricket.
Melbourne Renegades.
Yeah. So, I'm just bringing it up now.
Just Melbourne Renegades, would that be your BBL team, Arnie?
Yeah, that's definitely my BBL team.
Have you been down to the MCG? Do they play it always at the MCG whenever they play? I know.
No, the Renegades' home ground is Marvel Stadium, the other stadium in Melbourne. The MCG is the Melbourne Stars home ground. So they're like the Manchester United. They're the big team. They got the money. They got usually the key, the marquee players, and they get all the marketing and the press on TV. And the Renegades can't think of an EPL equivalent, but they're more of.
I basically asked you as if you're an Everton fan, do you play at Anfield? That's kind of what I've asked. It's like
that's exactly. No, they're like the Everton. They're like the Everton. They offer Renegades, right? But they won it in 2018, and I was so proud. That was BBL 8 or whatever they call it. Yeah, BBL 8. So I was so happy I went to the final, and I was just so happy because it was against the Melbourne Stars, our arch rivals as well, in the final. So 2 Melbourne teams in the final. I know I've digressed, but I have to talk about this now that it's brought up. And Melbourne Stars were cruising to victory. And guess what? Glenn Maxwell's team is the captain of the Melbourne Stars. They had a spectacular collapse in the run chase because they batted second, Melbourne Stars. And guess what? We won it. And I remember the name now. And who was critical? Who was one of the most critical players? And going back on the point that he was never ever considered for the national side, but he's very much on the international scene. Dan Christian.
Oh, Dan Christian. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He's an absolute gun and legend. He's got a brilliant cricket brain and he knows how to play the T20 format, but never selected. I don't know where or why politics come into it, which we won't get into because we're great, down to earth podcast. We don't talk about all that stuff. But I just think, and he's getting a bit older too. You could argue that too. But look, you can argue anything if you wanted to argue a particular point. But he's an absolute champion player, Dan Christian. He's won, BBL titles. He's won for different teams. He's won IPL titles, and goodness knows where else he's been and won titles. But he's one of the most winning guys.
I know you've had a chance to meet some of your Aussie sporting heroes. Have you ever met a local Melbourne cricket legend that's worth noting?
If you're talking recent, perhaps no, not like physically how you're going, mate, and shake their hand. In the past I have, but when I was more younger and I played a lot more like club cricket and got to meet some legends, but no, not recently, mate, not recently. Having said that, which is another topic, man, there's so many things we've talked about, but the guys, especially the Australian representatives, like Steve Wars and all that, they were a lot more accessible in the early days, like in the 80s and 90s. They were just so much more accessible. They came up to Darwin, which is where I grew up. They would just sometimes be sitting there watching our cricket games our club cricket games on the weekend. And I'm a kid, right? I'm a kid. So you can imagine as a kid, I mean, we were still awestruck at the time, but I look back on those times now and look back on how casual they would just be there and watch games like that. And nowadays, they're all locked up. There's protocols. They're celebrities in their own right. They're not guys who have to hold a second job, like as an electrician or whatever, and also play cricket. You know,
Yeah,
they're down professionals who have media training, everything. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of whenever you see the highlights of the old West Indian team of the 70s that dominated, and even in the 80s they dominated, and Viv Richards is there and he scores a century, and he's just in the middle of the pitch, just mobbed by 100 people wanting to shake his hand, and then somehow they all get the folks off the pitch again, and it's just like life continues on, and it's just anybody can run on, shake their hand, and say well done Viv for 100. And can you imagine if that had happened in these days? Let's go back to the Ashes test where Ben Stokes hit 100, but really it was him and Jack Leach. He hit the 100. The 100 meant nothing. He just needed to get to 130 to win the match. And can you imagine if people rushed on there and trying to settle yourself back? It's a different era for sure. But that Steve Waugh, like
era,
that is
and we're all well trained now. Yeah, we're all well trained now to not. It's a no-no to step foot on the hallowed ground or on a blade of grass. Otherwise you got maybe $10,000. I don't know how much it costs these days. Not that I've ever breached any of that, but it's not cheap. You step foot on the ground during a game, you'll get escorted from the ground, fined, and probably never allowed onto the ground again. That's a big price to pay.
Yeah, and to be honest, with I understand why. Like, I totally understand why. It's times change, and you gotta move with the times.
Yeah, but safety and all that stuff. But I guess it's no different to safety or lack of back in the 70s, 80s, and all, just showing our age now, or my age anyway. But anyway, we digress. So I can't remember, we digress down this path, which is great having these, and it's what we do. We talk cricket.
Let's bring it back to cricket. I heard Kevin Peterson talking about something during one of the Oval Invincible games. So Jason Roy is copping a lot of flack at the moment for his poor form.
We used to talk about Roy. Yes.
Yeah.
Go, yes.
So Peterson had this. I don't have the quote in front of me, but Kevin KP always is quite opinionated. He has some very interesting thoughts on franchising the county cricket game, which we need to write a laundry list of all the things we should talk about, because I would love to have our mate Cheese on to talk about that. I think he would be fantastic. But anyway, I digress yet again. He was very opinionated about how quickly people are to judge opening batsmen, and indicating that you're quite a bit more often, you're off than you are on. And people forget about what Jason Roy has done in the past. They forget about the break he took from, I think he took a break from the IPL to go back and spend time with his family. It was clearly exhaustion from the bubble, all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that his run making has not been good. And when you look at somebody like an Alex Hales, who has his own history, or you look at somebody, we mentioned Will Jacks as well, who has had a fantastic season as well. What do you think, first of all, KP's point of view there, and then maybe what?
Yeah, I haven't followed. I don't follow as much social media as I'd probably like, even though I'm on it myself. It's more, I usually put stuff out rather than read. But I'll just take what you've just told me there. Yes, taking in the context that KP is definitely a strong personality and has his own opinions, and sometimes I think it's really good because he calls out elephants in the room. I'm that kind of guy as well in general day-to-day life, so I respect that a lot. I think, based on what I've heard, mate, and again, I just say it how it is, I think he's leaning a little bit too much into his bias as Jason Roy as a friend versus Jason Roy as England cricket team as a business, right? Yeah. And on that note, if you've got that much depth at the moment, I know, when do you cut off and say this is the England squad for the T20 World Cup? We can't make any changes, and if they're out of form, we just got to keep investing in them. I don't know that line. That's another argument for another day. But if you've got clearly other strong standout candidates, and you can still make changes, I think you always pick the best team that you can for the current times. And I must admit, I've tried to give Jason Roy as much of a chance. I respect all the other context around emotional and mental health, taking a break and coming back fresh and all that. But just seeing yet again, last night, for example, his second ball duck, he must be thinking that himself. He must be, if someone's not going to call it, he should even call it himself, saying, you know what, guys, I'm really not the best man for the job right now. Not for his current team in the 100, but in terms of perhaps the squad for the T20 World Cup. Of course, we're all a bit selfish. We all want to be there. We all want the opportunity to be lifting up a World Cup trophy, and maybe the rest of his teammates carrying the team rather than him carrying it, the team. But sorry, I'm a bit long-winded, but I guess if I were to sum it up, I'm thinking I don't believe he's genuinely pickable at the moment for the England T20 World Cup squad. I just don't think, compared to the other couple of guys you've mentioned and possibly more, that he's their best 11 right now, or even best overall squad team, which is obviously made up of a lot more members. But that's just my view.
Yeah, and look, I'll say, we might look back on this conversation at the end of the 100, and he's in the top 5 run scorers because he finds whatever clicks. However, I kind of agree with you. Let's assume that he doesn't get it to click in the 100. I think England have a really a significant, well, not a significant problem, but Brett said this to me. We were chatting on. We were just texting back and forth, and he kind of said, "Look, I don't think it's a massive problem for England. I think you take Bairstow, but Bairstow at the top of the order, you put him there with Butler, and then you can kind of slot somebody in the middle where Bairstow was before, where there's perhaps a little more depth. Somebody like a Liam Livingstone can clearly slot in there. Or I know Moeen Ali might actually be retired from international cricket. I can't remember if he's still playing T20 international cricket, but somebody like that in there. But I think there'll be a part of people that don't want to upset the formula where Bairstow is playing the kind of cricket he is playing right now. And I think there's also an element for if you could squeeze more out of those young players, like Will Jacks is a great example. Alex Hales, who I know has his political side of why you can pick him and why you can't. But I agree with you. I think you get to the end of the 100 and he hasn't made a splash. Sorry, KP, but I think it's reasonable to ask, are there other guys who... There are guys who have gone to the World Cup and it's been their second international series, third international series, and they've smashed it. It's possible. Why shouldn't those guys be given an opportunity? So I think England are going to have a headache, more maybe in terms of the squad picking than they are in terms of the playing 11. Because the playing 11, you can easily excuse, we're going to try people out. But if Jason Roy is taking up a slot in the squad, like you say, for somebody like a Will Jacks, that's when I think it becomes a little tricky.
Yeah, and don't forget, there's again, we won't delve into politics, but every cricket board and their domestic situation is saturated, for lack of a better word, saturated in politics. So Roy, whether he gets the spot or is excluded from the squad, it will be littered with politics as to the final decision. And 100%. Don't forget,
100%.
That people know people, and I won't get into it, but whether Roy is retained or dropped, it sometimes is as much based on performance. You know, things like his performance and stuff put pressure on his spot, absolutely. But I think the biggest variable in a lot of these things, which are never really said, try to be called out in news articles and things and in conjecture that we're doing now, but it's usually driven by politics behind the scenes. That's, for me, the largest variable, and it's mateship, and it's all these things that are driven really powerfully behind the scenes that really ultimately form more of the percentage of the decisions made, in this case, whether he makes this team or not, rather than all the other stuff out there. All the other stuff like his performance and stuff puts massive pressure on that decision, but often probably doesn't change a decision. on
Yeah.
driven by the politics.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of things like central contracts with the ECB, and maybe that's part of the politics behind it. Again, I think Cheese would know that. We need to get him on to have a chat. But
why don't we get him on? Not on here, but get him in the squad.
100%.
England squad.
Cheese. Well,
I mean, come on, man. Beijing Ducks. I mean, come on.
Folks, listeners might know Cheese is a friend of ours who has been he's been making 50s on county grounds. Now I don't know if he's been playing county level cricket, but he's been making his 50s, so he's a man of form. You can't argue against that.
You can't argue his form, and that's more than what Roy's got. So sorry, Roy. I don't hate to say that, but we'll get one of our local boys there, and he's also a fellow Northern Superchargers fans. Up from Yorkshire way. So, mate, I got nothing more than brilliant things to say about the guy.
Yeah, we'll for folks listening, we will get Cheese on the podcast. I think some of the insight into the county game, and then the insight into. So I think he has some great stories to tell as well. So we'd love to have him on. But okay, we're about 40 minutes in, so let's quickly wrap up the 100. So let's go back to our predictions. So you and I, Arnie, both had London Spirit. We've already talked about this as the wooden spoon winners, or the out for the competition. We have done atrociously there. They're currently top of the table. We'll keep an eye on that. Brett is absolutely nailing his out. He went with the Welsh Fire, and unlike the London Spirit, who have had a couple of performers and team performances to be proud of, the Welsh Fire just look like they've fallen flat on the face. And Brett made a great point that any hope that they have in terms of individual talent, Bairstow is a good example, is either gone now or will be walking out the door slowly to go to the Test series, to go to their local T20 series or international series. So I think they're facing a big uphill battle. That was a good call by Brett.
Yeah. So absolutely. So we're wrong, but it's the season's not over yet, mate. Remember, the season's not over. So this table that we're looking at right now could be significantly reshuffled by the season. Yeah.
In terms of who we picked to win so far, my prediction of the Oval Invincibles looking pretty good. Brett's predictions of the Manchester Originals is actually looking not that great. Joss Butler's team has not lived up to the hype that Brett put them under. They lost one match by 52 runs against the London Spirit, which we both had them finishing last. So kind of a shocking result there, but we will monitor the situation and see how that goes, like you say. And then,
their net run rate is not great either. It's looking bad. Second to the poorness of the Welsh Fire. Significantly bad.
That's a good point. I hadn't noticed that until you pointed it out. I mean, the Welsh Fire is almost comically bad, but yeah, you don't want to be in.
But the Originals aren't that far behind. If you look at the gap between, I'm looking at the table here, the Southern Brave, who's third last, that gap between their net run rate to then the two worst, which is Manchester Originals and Welsh Fire, that's a big gap, the bottom two net run rate, which it's only one stat, okay, I get it, but I feel it's an important stat, and it shows they're not able to get runs. You can't get runs, you can't win. You can't win. Yeah,
100%. I mean, the Southern Brave did have one very, very hefty victory. They won by 9 wickets and then got pummeled by 53 runs by the Phoenix. So they've kind of been in that Jekyll and Hyde persona at the moment, where they're getting smashed or they're smashing other people. So which is a better place to be than the Manchester Originals, who've got smashed a couple of times, obviously. So absolutely. And then you had picked the Northern Superchargers to win, who we've already really talked about that. You think they're still a dark horse?
I think they're a dark horse.
Backing your horse.
I think they've got. I just think they've been really unlucky the last couple, especially last night's game. And I know I'm a bit biased, but I really think they've got a lot of upside and to charge up that ladder. But I'm just giving them a bit of spin right now.
Cool. Okay. All right. So look, we said we were going to do a quick little podcast here. We're off now almost 45 minutes. So we have a couple of topics we want to come back and revisit with Brett. So we're going to leave all the other kind of cricket chat to another day. But as you know, we usually wrap up our podcast with our 6 and outs of the week. The 6 being the entertaining or notable good thing that's happened through the week, and our out being maybe something more underwhelming and notable kind of bad things. So Arnie, I'm going to throw it over to you. What has been your 6 of the week?
6 of the week because I hinted on this earlier. I'm a massive advocate for mental health and good mental health, and there's no exception to that in cricket. We talked about the fatigue of players and all that. A lot of the fatigue comes from mentally as much as it comes physically. I think it's mentally. So my shout out, my 6 this week goes to Meg Lanning for all her accolades, being captain of the international Aussie women's team for such a long time. And it's great that she's taken a break. It says indefinitely, but I'd like to think that she's just taken a nice long break and then we'll come back. But I hats off to her for doing that because mental health is massive. It controls your decision making, controls every facet of your life. So that's my massive 6 of the week. Good on you, Meg Lanning, and thank you for your service to Aussie women's cricket and taking it to where it is right now. And we do hope you come back, but if not, I tell you what, you've pretty much done everything. So already etched in history, Meg Lanning.
100%. I would back up your statement on the mental health, especially within the game of cricket, which there's a great documentary on Prime that chronicles the England cricket team from like 2009 through to 2013 when they for the first time became the number 1 test team in the world. And Jonathan Trott talks really, really effectively and really provides a great deal of insight into the mental game and being able to block out things like the crowd, block out the chatter of the wicketkeeper, all that kind of stuff. And to be able to do that and then be in the spotlight and be traveling all the time, it's incredibly difficult. So and you're absolutely right on her accolades. She'll go down as one of the greats in the Aussie game for sure.
Yeah, thank you. What about your 6, mate?
My 6 of the week. So a little off the wall as usual. My 6 of the week goes to US camp counselor Ali Tarantino. So I'm going to have to. Yeah, I know that's who you were thinking of, Arnie. Whenever you asked me that question, Ali Tarantino. I'm going to provide a little bit of background here. She's a US camp counselor. So generally speaking, in the US, kids are kind of sent away to their camps for the summertime to have a little bit of a break, give their parents a little break, and they play sports. And baseball camp is a thing. And typically for kind of younger kids, they will make fake kind of baseball cards with the pictures of the kids' faces on it. Yep. So Ali Tarantino is going. I think he was in his basement. He was rifling through some old papers, and he found a old baseball card of Mark Zuckerberg, and it is now being made into an NFT. And both the card and the NFT are being auctioned off for charity. So there you are. He has a 1-of-1 Mark Zuckerberg baseball card, and that is my 6 of the week for finding gold in the basement.
Yeah, finding gold. Well, there you go. Good on this Ali, whoever he is. He's now on the map, or if he's not on the map, he's certainly got a bit of cash behind him now. And go NFTs. NFTs.
Kulka, and what about your out of the week, Arnie?
My out of the week, which for people that are close to me, it is a no-brainer, which is being in hotel quarantine. Look, it's part of a larger story. I've been on a road trip on my trip to Hong Kong, road to Hong Kong, which started in Melbourne and went all over Australia. And I'm currently on my last day of hotel quarantine. So my out is hotel quarantine, but it's not just hotel quarantine itself. A bit of context, guys, is whilst I have been in quarantine, as I was coming here, I lost one of my bags, and guess what? One of my bags, which has been found, but is zero. I won't swear on here, but let's say the people who are handling the baggage have 0 Fs about getting it back to me. And they've even put a high priority, but they treat high priority in a different way, like, oh, we will respond to you in 7 days, high priority. Anyway, what's in that bag? I don't want to get too personal, guys, but and look, there's nothing too dodgy in there, but it's just more essential stuff like daily medication, underwear. That's really embarrassing for me to say, but I will say it in the podcast just because it's entertainment value. Don't visualize this one too much. Don't visualize it too much, but I don't have a single pair of underwear except for the one that I wore coming into hotel quarantine.
Oh, no.
So I've been having regular showers, okay, but I won't go any more into it other than saying I'm isolated in a room. So you can imagine with no underwear. Well, yeah, anyway, don't visualize that too much, guys. But so long story short, my out of the week is just the whole quarantine experience and not having crucial, let's say, first world. It's a bit obviously a first world problem, but having all of the creature comforts you would normally have when you're not in quarantine or excluded from being able to do stuff. Because I literally can't do anything because I'm in a room. I'm locked in this room. So
I'm kind of glad.
first world problem.
I'm kind of glad you're locked in the room because you only have one set of underwear. But perhaps anybody listening here can urgently get a pair of jocks over to Arnie after he exits.
Yeah, it'd be great, guys. But by the time you get it to me, which will probably be quicker than the baggage team over at the unnamed airline, I'll be out of quarantine by this time tomorrow anyway. So, and I'm really thankful because it's going to be a massive reunion. Personal reasons.
I'm going to make a public service announcement. This is a public service announcement to the airline that is dealing with Arnie's baggage. If he doesn't have his bag and a fresh pair of underwear this time next week, we will name and shame the airline. That's the deal we're going to make. So you're on notice now. We will name and shame. We can't have a man going 2 weeks with no underwear. We got to get this.
Or I could send them a photo of what I am daily dressed like to the airline, and
Arnie.
it was not. It's
Arnie,
not pretty.
I think you should send them the one pair of underwear you've had for the last week and a half.
It will be sent in a biohazard Ziploc bag. Yes, it will be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's my out of the week. A bit off the wall as well.
Oh, I enjoyed that. I did that. That's probably one of my favorites so far. My out of the week is I was reading the paper this morning, and as we know in the UK, the weather's been incredibly hot at the moment. So I guess it's biologists, or perhaps I'm not sure what you call people. What would you call a person that is very knowledgeable on an insectologist? Would that be right? Probably an insectologist. Yeah.
It's actually a really good question. I don't know. Let's call him an insectologist.
Insectologists in the UK are warning that because of all the warm weather in the UK, that there's going to be an significantly increased swarms of sugar-crazed bees. So folks in the UK are being urged to avoid sweet products. No Coca-Cola, no fizzy drinks, no ice cream. So just when you get into the end of your summer holidays, you're going to be swarmed by a load of sugar-crazed bees, thanks to the hot weather. So that's my idea.
Well, yeah, stay safe, everyone in the UK. I know it's unprecedented or unseasonal, unusually unseasonal weather. So yeah, stay safe because I guess for as long as anyone has known, you don't need to cater things for having an air conditioner in your house and all these things. It's just a non-issue. So I do feel for everyone there, and definitely stay safe. And look, that's good advice. If there's any good advice in all of this podcast, you just heard it first from Craig. It's miles apart from my biohazard Ziploc bag thing, but yeah. Actually, on that note, the reason why actually I will probably forgot to mention at the start of the stream, why are we not on camera today, Noel, is because normally I try to set it up to help the guys with all of this as well, is with our podcast, is all my streaming equipment is also in that lost bag. So no webcam, no proper microphone, and just generally speaking, no ring light, all these things that are really, really important. So just what you guys don't see, you only see the finished product. There's a lot that goes into putting together any kind of broadcast, offline or live. So yeah, that's partly what set off the us doing what we're doing, and obviously Brett's not around. So we've just put this together based on what makes sense, and because it's our podcast, we generally can be more relaxed with the way we put things together. So that's a big reason. So that's another big addition to the out.
Yeah.
Wow, this is super loaded tonight.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot to put this together, but it always starts with a good, clean pair of underwear. So, well, hopefully you have all of your required equipment.
Yeah, I'm surprised I could stay focused today, Craig, without a clean pair of underwear. In fact, I don't even know what a clean pair of underwear looks like. I don't even know what underwear looks like. It's been 7 days, and being locked away can do funny things to your brain, mate. So, maybe you have to Google what a pair of underwear looks like.
That's it. We're gonna have to name this. Our last episode was called Pilot. This one's going to be called the underwear episode.
The underwear episode. And to be honest, you know what? If we ever offer trophies or a new segment of the week or whatever, it could be represented by a clean pair of underwear. And that is the trophy, maybe mounted or something. And people won't know where that's come from, but it could have come from just because of this particular podcast.
Yeah. Or if there any underwear merchants out there that want to flog a good pair of underwear on our podcast, we're happy to
that's right.
have you on. And Arnie would definitely pose and take pictures. I've already cleared that.
I'd probably stop at that. But yeah, there's plenty of good. Let's. What do they call themselves? What is the proper name for these guys? Undergarment manufacturers or brands? But absolutely, I'm sure we can come up with a new segment that would represent, that would have the clean pair of underwears be the representation for the segment, Yeah. And the clean underwear award of the week goes to XYZ.
Brett is never going to go on vacation again. He's never going to go on holiday because we've spent 30 minutes talking about cricket and then analysed the underwear market for the last 15 minutes. So
that's exactly right.
Anyway, right. Well,
sorry, it was a real supercharged out, but then I've gone through a lot as well. So apologies for that's too much information.
We are looking forward to you getting out and getting out and about in Hong Kong. So listen, we will maybe wrap up the podcast there.
Yep.
We will, Arnie, thank you very much for joining me. Enjoy getting your freedom. And folks might not know this, but you get your breakfast.
One last thing. Did you mention you were out? Did you mention you're out?
Yeah, my out was the bees. It was the.
Oh, that's right. It was the bees. Stay safe. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, mate.
Yeah. What are you getting shoved under the door for breakfast today? Just so folks know, Arnie is literally in it's basically a prison. You get shoved underneath the door.
Look, they actually offered for me to go out a couple of days ago, and I think in all of that where I said, no, I won't get into the reason why it's important for me to stay for the full 7 days, but in all of that, I think they lost my records. They didn't deliver me dinner last night, so I had to go through. It's added to the out. I'm so sorry, guys, but it's added to the out. I had to deliver. It's only because you asked me what I'm eating, and I haven't done it very much with you guys, but occasionally I send you a photo of what I'm eating because it is kind of what else is there to do other than get excited about your next meal. Today, what did I have? I had a what you'd call a more traditional Western kind of breakfast. I had they served up an omelette, baked beans, and some ham.
Nice.
And look, one thing I've noticed in all of the meals is I don't know what the obsession is here in Hong Kong, but on my little bento box that I get on the tray that of food, every meal has corn in it. Like a little edge corner away, they have all these kernels of corn, and I'm like, what? And I like corn, but I don't know what the obsession is. Anyway, that is my breakfast. The last meal, actually. By the time I leave tomorrow morning, I will not have. To be honest, I'm getting a bit sick of these meals, so I won't know. I just had my last breakfast. Hopefully, and as I mentioned, they forgot about my dinner last night, but I try to sort all that out by reminding them that I am still here and that there is still someone in this room, and that they should make sure that they still feed me and look at and remember that there is still a living and breathing person in this room, and that they should let me out eventually.
Yeah, I'm getting so much more than I bargained for in this podcast. My last nugget is going to be: I was in our local grocery store today, Arnie, and I walked down the ethnic food aisle, the ethnic foods,
yes,
and I saw Tim Tams. So they've officially made
Wow.
it. They're. I guess they have enough cultural kind of impact that they're now considered fully ethnic. So yeah, that's my food story for the week.
Fully ethnic as in Australian.
I guess so. I mean, they were kind of there beside, the Thai curry sauces. So I don't know how anybody kind of stacking the shelves came to that conclusion of, oh yeah, Thai red curry and Tim Tams. But yeah, there you go.
Having said that, all due respect to my American friends, some of them don't really even know where Australia is, let alone confusing it with our other European country, Austria. But
Oh,
anyway,
having a real Dumb and Dumber moment. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
anyway, look, mate, what a brilliant podcast. We've had heaps of fun, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good chat. Let's wrap it up there, Arnie. Great chatting to you. We'll chat again soon. Thank you to everybody who's listening. We will be back again in a week's time, possibly with Brett. I don't know when he gets back, but we will certainly get him involved again and catch up on some of maybe the England South Africa series, maybe the women's 100 now that it's underway. So we'll look forward to that. But Arnie, once again, thank you very much. We will chat again soon, and thank you for listening.
Pleasure. Take care. Bye.
Bye.